Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started in today's training. Remember, just throw into the chat, throw a couple of words about your core competency, etc. Out there. No need to put a sales pitch in. Just let people know who you are, and you build your network slowly through trust, which is awesome. Okay, let me get my slides up. I've done this training a little bit before. I mean, I've talked about this 1,000 times, but I've done this particular step that I'm about to go through today a little bit before, and I'm not sure how much time it's going to take, because the last time I did it, I had 3 hours, and today I have 30 minutes. So we'll see how well I've refined my talk down. But I want to talk to you about choosing your target federal agency. It is really important to be proactive in your sales success and your sales strategy, and not reactive. Reactive is where you just go into every shiny little object, so every shiny little agency that looks like it's exciting today. And proactive is to sit there and say, look, in 2026, I'm going to land sales and revenue that'll take care of my 2026 and 2027 revenue goals, right? And by the way, if you don't know this, 2027, you should be doing the sales today. You should not show up in 2027 and go, okay, what are we doing? No, if you do it right, and I get it, sometimes it's hard. Sales is hard, but when done right, your revenue for 2027 should be predictable from your sales in 2026. But that starts, in my opinion, with you choosing a particular federal agency or choosing specific target agencies to go after, and then doing the work to land the sales in there. That's what we salespeople do. And all of us in government contracting, basically, we're salespeople. We're out there trying to understand the customer's needs and move forward onto discussing our solutions and how it fits in with their needs. So if you chase every federal agency, what I'm suggesting is you're not going to land any of them. You might get a small contract here or there, but you're not going to get any traction to speak of when you try to target too many agencies. When you narrow that, that's the fastest way to grow your agent or your business, right? Is you pick a target department, a target agency like the Navy or Department of Homeland Security, whatever, and you go really deep into that customer. And as you grow your company and you have more people who can do sales, business development, capture, et cetera, well, then you can add more agencies. But for the most part, the right way to do it is one agency per person. This is what's done in the large businesses. This is what we all do as our businesses grow and get bigger and bigger, is we sit there and look at somebody and say, hey, your job's to go get me $1 million or $5 million in that particular agency. I have a friend who works at a large prime contractor. His sales goal every year is $2 billion with a B. His goal is $2 billion a year in the Air Force. That's it. He can't go to the Navy. He can't go to Coast Guard, which has a ton of money, right? He has to get that money in that target agency. That's doable. That's what we do in sales. We determine a territory or a target customer, and then we sit there and do what it takes to get into that target customer or that target customer pool. When you do choose a target or one target agency or a set of related target agencies, it all begins to work together. And I'll talk more about this in a couple of slides. But basically, the information you learn relates to other information, which allows you to get smarter and smarter and smarter about an agency. The relationships that you develop lead to other relationships. This is a natural thing where John will introduce you to Jane, who's in the same organization. But it's kind of hard for John to introduce you all the way over here to a different agency when John doesn't even know anybody. Opportunities begin to align. You start seeing inside the agency more and more areas that you can support, and you really start hearing about opportunities that you never would have heard about if you didn't have those relationships and develop that understanding of the customer. And then your visibility grows because you're responding to RFIs, because you're responding to RFPs, and you're building strategic relationships. People begin to know you within that agency. They begin to bring information to you. Pretty soon they begin to invite you into the opportunities that you'd like to pursue. So this is what we're going to be talking about today as we dive into choosing the right federal agencies for your company. I'm going to break up the training into two sections. The first one is why it's important to limit yourself to target agencies, and I already kind of alluded to that. And then the second, which is where the bulk of what I want to do today, is I want to show you steps I use to find target agencies. I've been doing this for years and years and years. And now with AI here, you've got tools that kind of assist you to be able to do it more, do it faster. And so I chose an example that I could show you. On Friday, I did a training with a whole big cohort of small business government contractors. And one of the things I wanted to show them was how I could find the right agencies for my company when I pretended like I worked for one of them who did something that I've never done before. Like the type of things they sell is not IT. I sell IT services or something, so I know that area. I wanted to do something different. I'm going to walk you through the, I think it's like 7 steps that I went through to be able to give them a set of target agencies that are rich for their growth and ideal opportunities. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonough. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. After I got out of the Army, I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you. If you're not following me on LinkedIn, definitely follow me on LinkedIn so you can see the content that I'm putting out, etc. This morning, as an example, I put out a piece of content that said, here's the 60 seconds steps. Here's the steps that take 60 seconds to get your capability statement into your LinkedIn personal profile. And this is really important because if your capability statement's in LinkedIn, that somebody discovers you, they can learn more about your company by finding your capability statement. So, that's the type of tips I put out, the really actionable tips that you can do. Same thing with my government contracting success newsletter. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. It's here on LinkedIn. It is the largest government contracting newsletter. And I believe the reason is because I always put in actionable information that is helpful to you in your understanding of the federal market and actionable steps that you can take to grow your company. Last thing on this slide, I just want to let you know that tomorrow I'm going to be doing another training. I'm here every day at noon on LinkedIn. And tomorrow I'll be talking about being federal buyers' first choice. And so when federal buyers go out there and do market research, or they're looking for companies like yours, not only do you want to show up on the list, but I want to talk to you about how do you show up at the top of the list so that you're first ones they see. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. Make sure you register. Okay, doing pretty good on time. I got 23 minutes left. The first thing I want to talk about is just reminding you and maybe introduce you to this concept of why it's so important to limit the customers you go after. In business, sometimes like my own business that I'm building, we have something called an ICP, an ideal customer profile, and it defines who we're trying to go after. So an example is I don't try to go after and work with large government primes. My information can certainly help them, but I'm not here to help them. Like they got stockholders and they got billions of dollars. They can do it themselves, right? I'm here to help the small business community. That is my target community that I want to build and support. Well, you need to be doing that same thing, is thinking to yourself, the federal government is not my target customer, right? My ideal customer profile is not if they're in the federal government. That's too big. You need to niche that down and focus down on specific customers. So for example, the Navy, you go, hey, I've discovered everything and the Navy is who I want to be with. And I'll talk to you about how I do that. But the reasoning, right, why it's so helpful and why you want to limit yourself is because when you do, everything builds on it, on your efforts. Every step that you do, every action you take leads to bigger and bigger action. Instead of staying at a whole bunch of early stage type steps, your sales activity, your business development activity is maturing with you as you get farther and farther into an agency. So right here, I'm sharing my 7-step process for federal revenue success that I teach. And in there, the first step is research, right? You go into an agency, you understand everything about that agency. You understand how they're organized. You understand their strategic documents and their strategic priorities that they've set for themselves. And then inside of an agency, subordinate commands or subordinate agencies, they too have strategic documents that guide where they're going. If you ever look at some of the information I share out there, you can see like a lower level command in the Navy is tying its priorities to the Navy's priorities, and the Navy is tying theirs to the Department of Navy's priorities, and the Department of Navy is tying it to the Department of War's priorities, And the Department of War is tying it to the Trump administration's stated priorities for where they're going. And so these all tie into each other. And as you have more and more conversations, that research you do makes you smarter and smarter about the agency. I like to say you want to know the agency better than anybody who works in the agency, because most people who work in the agency only really focus on their small portion of the agency, right? But you're looking holistically. Imagine trying to do that level of understanding at many agencies. It's just not possible. You can't invest yourself in that many locales or customers and really go in any level of depth. So first step is research. And then when you start doing targeting is basically about finding, 200-300 people that you begin to outreach to as you're working towards building strategic relationships. Because once you build strategic relationships, you're on what I call the wheel of success. This wheel of success means you build strategic relationships within an agency, industry partners who are winning, and government personnel, and you're building on those relationships, which allow you to hear about opportunities that are perfect for your company. You're able to get in there and really understand how are they buying what I'm selling, right? We're able to do that through these strategic relationships. So those lead to the opportunities that are best for your company. When your pipeline is full of what I like to call slam dunk opportunities, then you're able to write winning proposals, not just proposals that use an AI tool and it's sending it out. No, you're using an AI tool with all the data and information you got from your business development and capture activity. You're not putting all the win or don't win factors on the AI tool, because AI is here, we're going to use it, but you're bringing all of that research and relationship information into the proposal writing that you do, which enables you to write a proposal that when it's sitting on a contracting officer's desk, they're like, I want to award to Brett. This is perfect. His company's perfect. The experience is perfect. Awesome, right? That's a winning proposal. And that comes from finding the right opportunities. So that comes from getting deep into an agency and really understanding it. When you do that, you land sales, and sales means you're on this wheel of success, because people are going to love that you do great work for them. They're going to hear about it from their peers within an agency. Anyways, that's a very fast way of talking about the 7-step process, but why you want to limit yourself to target agencies so that you can really go in and go deep and wide within a particular customer and see yourself building $10-20 million in annual revenue from that customer. By the way, the opposite of everything I just said is FOMO, fear of missing out. If you go, well, no, I got to be in many agencies. What if I miss an opportunity that's great for us over here? Well, that means you're going to be jumping around everywhere. No one will remember you for knowing their agency or doing their work really well. So you want to be known. Okay, so I wanted to show you just an endpoint. I'm not teaching today this wheel, but this wheel was the basis of what I'm about to teach you. Fundamentally, this is a sales strategy wheel I created a long time ago. Excuse me. And I use this instead of a typical 20-page strategic plan for 2026, for example. Too many words and no one looks at it. So I use a strategic wheel where you just put it up on your wall and go, this is where we're driving to. And the point is, inside of here, what I say is, what are you selling? The service areas. And then how much money are you trying to make? So for example, I say $12 million. And then how are you making it? How much is priming and how much is subbing? And the part I want to get you to that really we're going to talk about today is, then you need to say, which agencies are we going after? Because the subcontracting, that subcontracting set of dollars is still going to come from the agencies that you're seeing in the prime contracting area up on top. Why would I subcontract with somebody who's not in my target agency? But when I tell the relationships I have with prime contractors, hey, here's where I'm going, and they're also in there, we're able to build together into my target agencies. So what I want to teach you today is, how did I come up with the target agencies I went after? And more importantly, how did I come up with this top row, which are basically subordinate commands or subordinate offices that are the ideal ones in there? And I'm going to try to do that in 16 minutes. Okay, really quick, just because the first slide says, talks about what do we sell. I said this before, I'm an IT services offering, basically, when I have my companies. So I wanted to pick one that I didn't know anything about. And I saw this company was doing right-of-way mowing, which I kind of had an idea about, and then debris clearing. And the minute I heard that, I'm like, no, I talked with people who like doing the work, like elevator installation or hallway destruction or whatever, but they don't like, those contractors don't like actually like taking the all the debris away. And so they subcontract. And I went, oh, I kind of have an idea of what you do. Not too much, but that's the company I'm trying to move forward and show you how I walked through the steps I walked through. And I used ChatGPT for the, I actually feel like I'm still a little bit smarter than ChatGPT. But I could have, because I've been at this so long and I've been teaching for so long and so much that I can quickly go, oh, what about this? What about that? But I would encourage you to use whatever your version of ChatGPT is, because it is a great tool to help guide your conversation. You're the expert about what you do and you can ask the right questions, but you start moving forward. So I used 7 prompts. That it took me only 7 prompts in about an hour at most for me to come up with the ideal agencies that he's going after. And I'm going to show that wheel at the end of the prompts to remind you again. Before I start with the first prompt, I just want to say everything I was looking for and everything I'm trying to do when I'm finding a target customer is about understanding who owns the problem, who funds it, and then who turns it into a contract. Those aren't all the same people or the same offices. And so I want to understand that. Fundamentally, I want to know who owns the problem, though. That's my biggest one. Okay, so prompt 1, I started with, if I sell debris clearing, which cabinet level agency should I target? I think I'm looking forward to the weekend so I can take 2 days off of talking. Okay, so the first thing I'm asking ChatGPT to help me with, and if I didn't have ChatGPT, I would be going into the agency tools, the federal government tools, and learning more about this. But now I got ChatGPT, it speeds it up. So if I sell debris clearing, which cabinet level agency should I target? And what that means is, should I target a cabinet level as the president of the United States has a cabinet? They also call them the 24 CFO agencies, where they're basically the largest agencies. I don't care about planning my 2026 and 7 sales strategy around small agencies. I want to plan for an agency that could give me $20 million in revenue next year and still have a ton more to spend on my competitors, right? But if I go somewhere to a small agency, like the White House, for example, it has a small budget. Only a few of us can get in there, win contracts, and then boom, all the money's used up. And so I want to target initially which cabinet level agencies are the best ones for me. So it came back, and by the way, if you'd like, and enough people ask me for this, I can share a URL to my Chat GPT prompt, and you see me going back with Chat GPT just completely raw. If you want that and to see how that flows, I'm happy to share that. Okay, so I got this information. It was like, oh, you should look at this agency and that agency. So my second prompt was trying to dive down and force ownership clarity. So when you tell me about particular agencies or high-level cabinet level areas, you got the Army or you got the Veterans Affairs, et cetera, HUD. Well, which parts of those agencies actually own what I thought was the things related to debris clearing? So facilities, land, or assets. And so an example is facilities to me is, if you think about a VA hospital system, that's a facility, their campus, et cetera. So who owns that? Who's responsible for minor construction, things like that? Who owns land? If I think about the military and military installations, and then the assets that are in there. So I'm trying to drive in and go, okay, if this is what I'm looking at, and basically debris clearing aligns with construction, and I know that intuitively, so I'm asking some questions around that. The next prompt that I used, as it came back, it was throwing a bunch of different agencies. It was saying certain things, and so I wanted to start asking questions, and I wanted to get clarity around the buyers, the actual program office. I'll give you an example why, because I can't remember if I'm going to show it in a minute. But inside of the Army, when I showed you the wheel, one of the target 8 departments was the Army, and one of the commands was Force Command or Forces Command. And the idea behind it is, when I was talking with ChatGPT and I was asking it at these first few prompts, one of the commands it gave back to me was TRADOC. And this is what I meant by sometimes I feel like I'm a little smarter than ChatGPT. It mentioned TRADOC to me, which is training, doctrine, command, or something in the Army. And when it said that, I'm like, well, what are you talking about? In a few months ago, in the end of 2025, the Army reshifted the commands, et cetera. And so TRADOC combined with another command, and they became T2 or T2 command. And they lost a lot of the responsibility they used to have. I liked the idea of TRADOC. I was already thinking about TRADOC in the sense that you have to keep up with me here a little bit, but TRADOC traditionally had responsibility for all the military training, the bases and the ranges. When I was in the Army Rangers, we used to go into these mock villages and then destroy them with bullets and bombs, et cetera. Well, somebody needed to come in and clean that up and build it back to another new town that we could train in. And so TRADOC had responsibility for a lot of that and buying the services that were needed. Anyways, long story short, I knew that TRADOC was gone. It was no longer existing the way ChatGPT was thinking. And so I pushed ChatGPT for that ownership clarity, that clarity around the agencies. And we started having this discussion. And I know that sounds a little weird if you don't use ChatGPT a lot. But we started having discussions around, well, who really has got that responsibility now? And what we settled on was FORSCOM, because they have the need for all of this. They actually don't do the contracts. And this is coming to who's separate the policy from the buyers. Well, I was separating the users, the people with the need, and FORSCOM would work with somebody else, some other command, to buy some of the stuff they might need and serve some of their training needs. And so I'm asking these questions. And my point to you is, inside of ChatGPT, you've got to be comfortable asking those questions back. It's like, can you tell me the difference between who owns the problem, who funds it, and then who turns it into a contract? These are big deals. Like the Army Contracting Command does most of the buying. But if you go to another major department or agency, they actually, the same command who has the need does the buying. They have their own contracting people. So it's different across all agencies, and you want to understand those particular areas. Okay, I'm just looking at my clock right there. So as I'm separating out, who's setting the rules, who's got the actual need, the program office to a degree, who's actually spending the money, who's funding it. Well, then I move on into finding more about the contracting layer and how this is done, who's issuing the contract. And you got to be careful, because I don't want to be only spending my time with who's issuing the contract, but I do want to understand, where is it being bought? I'll give you a quick example. In the VA, there's an administration called the Veterans Health Administration. They're the ones that handle all the hospitals and medical care. And inside their organizational structure, down at the bottom, they have something called a VA Medical Center. And that VA Medical Center is basically, a hospital campus. And as you grow, get bigger, they go up into something called a VA Integrated Services Network, which is basically a group of 6 or 8 hospitals come together under VISN 6, for example. So VISN, VISN 6. And inside of there, the individual hospitals have the ability to buy up to, let's say, $250,000. That's the highest price tag they can buy. If they need to buy something bigger, like let's say a big x-ray machine or something, well, then that goes to the VISN, where not only do they manage the contracting at that level, but they also manage that request against the other 6 or 7 hospitals, and they bring it together. This is what I mean by trying to understand who's issuing the contracts and when and where what you buy happens. And so for the company that I'm using as today's example, debris clearing and lawn mowing, things like that, very minimal purchases at one level when it's local. And then other times you might be looking at large contract vehicles around lawn mowing services for all military installations, et cetera. This is what I'm trying to discover. And then I'm trying to discover, well, who's spending the most on that? Okay, so let's go to prompt 5. So as I go in here, I want to find out where debris clearing happens the most. So an example of where I know it happens the most, and if you happen to see this or remember this from the wheel, one of the departments that I chose, the prime target customers, is the United States Army Corps of Engineers. they do the most construction in the entire federal government. And so in there, if they're doing construction, guaranteed they're doing debris clearing. To me, I'm like, that is a target customer. You absolutely need to put them on. One quick caveat, by the way, when I fill that plan out, if I'm much smaller, I'm saying this is where I'm going over the next 5 years, not next 1 year. And I'm only going to go after this one first until I get traction. Then I'll add the next one. Then I'll add the next one, kind of thing. So don't think if you're brand new or under $1 million, $2 million, you should be looking at the Army Corps of Engineers, HUD, and VA. That's too much. You want to scale it down until you've got the bandwidth and the resources, the people to grow. So prompt number 5, though, I'm looking in here going, well, who else besides the Army Corps of Engineers is doing repeatable activity? In the VA, one of the reasons we really liked that is because the VA campuses does a lot of minor construction type things, replacing floors, painting walls, doing other stuff. And I was like, man, maybe you can get in there and really become known for the best debris clearing company who never gets violations, blah, blah, blah. And you can team up with a bunch of other companies that are also in the VA. The VA, the medical centers, has 150 of those campuses that I mentioned, the VA medical centers, and then like 1,000 community-based outpatient centers, which are, let's just call them smaller VA medical centers, right? They have 1 or 2 or 3 buildings or something. And so they're out there in the communities, but they still have their own need. That's a big growth area for years and years to come. And so I look for those repeat demands that they'll have. Number 6, here I'm following the expansion path. So if I look at debris, the debris clearing, things like that, what I also want to see is there a lot of construction going on? Whatever you sell, you want to sit there and go, yes, they do some of this, but is there expansion projects I can go into in the out years? I don't want it, like I said in the White House sounds, it was one of my customers. It sounds really cool. It's not overly cool. It's just a small customer in there, and they don't do a lot of buying, and they don't have a lot of expansion. But when I went to the Department of Homeland Security, for example, we were able to get in there in some small areas. For us, it was SharePoint, and then we expanded into much bigger areas. And it's the same thing here. I want to understand how the services lead into bigger areas that I can participate in, so I can be very focused on what I sell and I target, but I know that agency I'm targeting has growth potential for me to reach $50 million a year. And then last prompt that I used is, I worked with ChatGPT and I said, niche me down. I want you to realistically help me pick the agencies I can go after. And let me just show you this slide again. So now, like, thinking about those prompts, and by the way, if you didn't capture them, feel free to ask me to send them to you, and I will, or I'll just put them into the comments later or something. Excuse me. But in here, inside of the VA, so let me show you the prime target federal agencies I'm going after as a representative of this company, for example. So I'm going after the VA medical centers I mentioned, and CBOX. Those are the hospital ones. I also put down, because I like 3, the National Cemetery Administration, because I do debris clearing, and they're constantly doing stuff in the cemeteries to maintain them. Sometimes they're cutting down weeds and trees. Sometimes they're having to clear areas to make room, unfortunately. And so that's an area that I would explore. The HUD, when I go into HUD, really quickly, because I know I'm going to run out too, the value of HUD is that HUD doesn't actually build or do anything, but HUD's money, most of it floods down in, excuse me, to the states and the local governments, et cetera. And so these organizations that I mentioned, like PIH at the top is something Indian Housing, these community, whatever P&D is, the community department, that's the ones that spend the money locally, focused on HUD's mission. But anyways, my point is all that money is flooding down, and these 3 offices within HUD own all that. And talking with ChatGPT, I'm like, oh, I came to understand that whatever PHA is, sorry, I don't have it sitting handy. Actually, one second. PHA is Public Housing Authority. So that organization, though, has responsibility for managing a bunch of people who are spending the money. They have a list of who all those people are. And ChatGPT was talking about how their strategic plan talks about trying to engage with them. And so I would reach out to these folks. And you can see the same thing across the Army and the Corps of Engineers. It's like, these are the people who are most likely to spend on what I want. Now, my next job, right? This is kind of the early research. My next job is to really research each one of those offices in depth and dive forward. I'm out of time, but let me make sure you remember these three things. First, start with one large department, and then as your team grows, grow to the next one. Inside that large department, figure out the sub-agencies that are best for you. If you go to the Navy, not every command within the Navy is right for you. And then the last thing is confirm the agency spending levels through USA Spending, USA or FPDS, et cetera, or even just talking to somebody within the agency. Confirm that there's long-term potential for you. All right, if you found value in today's training, do me a favor, repost this without comment on a LinkedIn. Let other people find out about our community and my content. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is ending on time. I'm out of time. I will see you next time.